the Purdue Michigan matchup. Purdue's sitting at 8-4. Michigan's sitting obviously undefeated at 12-0. Purdue has the four losses are to Penn State, Syracuse, Wisconsin, and Iowa. I know you know both of these teams really, really well. Aiden O'Connell has been one of your guys all year long. Sometimes that's been a good look for you. Sometimes it's been one of those like, heck, I need you to explain, big dog.
Yeah. Now, so on a bigger scale here, I think this weekend for me, I'm really excited because a lot of these conference championship games mean more. What I mean by that is I think in previous years, it may just be me feeling it and, maybe not being as in tune as I have been the last 2 years. But I feel like, the 4 was pretty much set. Like everyone knew what it was. You had them going into it. I think this year, there's some matchups, some rematches in these conference championships, which is great.
Hell yeah.
I just feel that this year there could be some mixing up going on. And actually, producer Dagan and I were talking before you got on about this game in particular with Purdue and Michigan, because it always seems like Purdue are those guys that go out there and slay a giant every year. They got 2 last year. They beat, I believe they beat Ohio State and someone else who was really high. I got to go back and look at it. But they got 2 last year in the top 5. Iowa, when Iowa was up after they got Penn State. So they got 2 in the top 5 last year. Haven't gotten any this year. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but obviously my guy in O'Connell, he actually tragically lost his older brother last week. Just found out about that. So played the Indiana game, going to have a tough week. Hopefully he can get everything together and get ready for them boys here heading into the weekend. That's terrible. And for him, thoughts and prayers with him and his family. But, I think he's going to have to be a big factor in their ability to win this ball game. And that was me bringing that up. And that's it's one of those things where kind of out of the game of football, bigger than the game of football, but we'll see what happens. All expectations to me, Michigan does what they need to do and handle business. I think this is one of the more straightforward conference championship games, but the only team to come out of that scrum in the West that was dangerous to me and kind of unpredictable was this Purdue team. I think if you had anyone else come out of that scrum who was kind of in there, Iowa was in there, Illinois even, like you knew what you were getting, right? I just feel like this Purdue team has been too up and down, too inconsistent. They could go out and go toe-to-toe with Penn State and the best of the best, just being Penn State using the example early season. But then they could also come out there and fuck around and get beat by Iowa, who couldn't move a damn football 3 inches if you tried. So at that point in time in the season. So they're just really unpredictable, man. And it's usually a tough opponent coming into a conference championship game with a lot of expectations.
Hack, this is one of those games, and the championship games are this way for me. I think you and I have worked together enough at this point where, man, we can sit both of these teams, even 8-4 Purdue, and you just did a great job of. There's a lot of good to be discussed, and you definitely get into Michigan. There's a lot of good to be discussed, but everybody in the damn country is discussing that shit. You know what I mean? It's like what when I look at these games, like with Purdue, I'm with you. It's got to be a slay the giant type of situation. It's got to be a Aiden O'Connell and his family situation. That's something that dudes could play for beyond the game, right?
Right.
But when I look at that Iowa game, the Iowa loss, you mentioned it. The Iowa loss for Purdue scares the hell out of me when I'm talking about possibly Purdue being able to slay this thing, right? Aiden O'Connell goes out there, throws for $170, which for him is subpar. 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. As a team, they rushed for 87 yards. And if you look at Iowa, I'm not so much worried about the point that Iowa scored 24 points. I'm more dialed in on the fact that Purdue was only able to put up 3 on that defense, right? And I don't know the ins and outs of that particular game of exactly how it all went down, why it happened. But as I look at that, Iowa's defense is absolutely legit, right? Yeah. And you look at Michigan's defense. I think Michigan's defense is absolutely legit. So if Purdue's going to slay this giant, I just don't – I don't know how they're going to do it given what we've seen versus like elite defenses. Not just good defenses, but elite defenses. Yeah. I know you – and I want this – I'm going to take it there, right? Mm-hmm. I know you like Penn State's defense, and they put up 31 on Penn State.
Yeah.
My question to you is, how do you look at Iowa lost 24-3 and then Penn State 35-31? Those are 2 very different ball games. who is more of the real Purdue team, I guess,
And
is where I'm going.
And that's the hard thing, man. Like I don't fucking know, because they've shown glimpses of both throughout the year, and it just hasn't been consistent enough on either side of the spectrum. And it's a program where even last year, when they did beat Ohio State and Iowa, when they were top 5 teams, like no one was expecting it, and they didn't come out and like necessarily. I mean, they threw a couple monkey wrenches in the whole operation, but it wasn't like they were just like, blocking punts and, returning this and pick six. Like they came out and beat them, like straight up beat them. So for the most part, there was a little trickery in there, but so, I mean, I think that this team's will come in with some gadgets, with some junk, with some momentum things. I think it's a program, like I said, that's been there, done that in terms of beating teams, but they've never done it on this stage with these type of expectations, with people actually talking about it. Right. So I think that that's an element of it where, Michigan knows what they're heading into. I think they all had a feeling of uncertainty about this Purdue team. I think anybody watching the Big Ten consistently could sit there and say, to your point, they'd come out here and hang 42 on you, or they'd come out here and lay an egg. Like you just don't know what it is, right? So to answer your question, man, because I have a really hard time, and I don't know about you, but I have a really hard time like comparing like wins, losses, this and that, because I feel like in college football, there's too many damn variables, man. You got kids, you got break up with your damn girlfriend. There's just so much shit that goes into it. For teams to be consistent week in, week out is really tough. I mean, what do you think about that statement? To me, like that's just one thing that's really hard to do.
I think it matters. Here's what matters to me is and you and I feel like have two different perspectives, as much as two quarterbacks can have different perspectives. Is like I feel like I played for more of a Purdue like team, where I think you played for more of a Ohio State, Alabama type team, where you had y'all, whether it was your year or just in general, like y'all had a little different, I think, perspective of the game than maybe we did. So I feel like for Purdue, it's you're inconsistent because you ain't good enough to be consistent. You don't have the dudes to be consistent every damn week in, week out when you're playing uphill, right? The way that Purdue has to do. The question is, can Purdue get up for one ball game against Michigan?